We are on to round 7 of the 2025 season back in Imola for the first race of the year in Europe. Will the McLaren dominance continue? Or could we get some surprises from Mercedes? Maybe Red Bull? Probably not Ferrari though. And what a couple of weeks for Alpine with driver and team principal changes since the Miami Grand Prix. We've got a packed episode. All coming up next on the Chicanery Podcast. Alright, before we actually start previewing the Grand Prix this weekend, I want to start with Alpine, because what an eventful 2 weeks it's been for them. It was announced shortly after the Miami Grand Prix that Jack Doohan would be replaced by Franco Colapinto for at least the next 5 races. We've seen the writing on the wall, really since the preseason. This move seemed inevitable. A team just doesn't sign a reserve driver to a 5-year deal. But now that this is all played out, it's pretty obvious what happened here. Alpine signed Doohan last fall before Colapinto became available. When Colapinto became available, they immediately regretted their decision to sign Doohan and started looking for a way out. And they found that way out by signing Colapinto as a reserve driver and only giving Doohan a certain number of guaranteed races. It makes you think, who in their right mind is Jack Doohan's manager who would agree to this type of deal? Well, his manager is Flavio Briatore, so makes a little bit of sense there. For the move, though, I don't agree with it. Only giving a rookie driver 7 races to prove himself is incredibly harsh. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, it's only been 6 races, what are you talking about? Remember, Doohan did get the seat for the season finale in Abu Dhabi last year. A very tough break for him, though, and his F1 career. But at the same time, what has Jack done to save his seat? You look at his resume, 7 races, 2 DNFs, his highest finish was P13, his lowest when he didn't retire was P17. You look at Franco Colapinto's resume, 9 races, 3 DNFs, but he has 2 points finishes, with his highest being P8 in Baku of last year, and his lowest result when he didn't retire was P14. It's a really small sample size, but Franco has the better stats. You have to agree with that. And another factor that matters in this world, Franco has the better financial backing with sponsorships. Now the pressure is still on Franco to really perform these next 5 races, but is it really? I think we would need to see some catastrophic results from Franco for him to actually lose his seat. It's clear this is what the team has wanted all along, and they're going to give him every benefit of the doubt when it comes to this decision. And like I said, the bar really isn't that high for him to outperform Jack Doohan. Now, this wasn't the only news coming out of Alpine since Miami. Oliver Oakes, the team principal, abruptly resigned days after the Miami Grand Prix. At first, this looked like some sort of rift between Oakes and Flavio Briatore over the decision to replace Jack Doohan, but boy do we potentially have some controversy here. Now, this is all a theory as of now. Nothing has been proven to be true, but this story looks like it has some legs to it. So Oliver Oakes founds High-Tech GP in 2015, and they become a pretty notable team in F2 and F3. Shortly after its formation, Nikita Mazepin, as we all know is the former Haas driver, joins the team and starts racing for them. Shortly after this, his father Dmitry Mazepin ends up owning 75% of the team. Fast forward to 2022. We have the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and as we know, both Dmitry and Nikita Mazepin are essentially forced out of the sport due to their ties to Vladimir Putin. Not only are they forced out of the sport, but both Mazepins are sanctioned by the European Union and United Kingdom, which was a big problem for Mazepin, since High-Tech is a British-based team. This is where things start to get fishy. 9 days before Russia invades Ukraine in 2022, Mazepin essentially gives up his shares in High-Tech to Oliver Oakes, making Oakes the outright owner of the team. But Oakes didn't even really buy the shares from Mazepin. They were just transferred to him without any payment. Right after that, Oakes forms a new company, High-Tech Global Holdings, to take control of the shares. Also at this time, Oliver Oakes' brother, William Oakes, takes over as the director of High-Tech. All right, we got it? Fast forward to 2025. On May 1st, right before the start of the Miami Grand Prix weekend, William Oakes is arrested in the United Kingdom with large amounts of cash and charged with transferring criminal property. 2 days after the Miami Grand Prix weekend, on May 6th, Oliver Oakes abruptly resigns as team principal. Now, it was alleged that he flew straight to Dubai from Miami, does have extradition laws with the UK, but typically doesn't follow them for financial crimes. So that made people think he was in hiding and wrapped up in this whole thing with his brother. But then we go to this weekend, and Oliver Oaks shows up to Imola. So who knows what's really going on here. But at least for his brother William, it looks like he's been wiring money to Dmitry Mazepin from High Tech GP, and that's what he was arrested for. I don't know what this means for Oliver. I don't know if he was involved in this too. The unexpected resignation and the stories of him hiding in Dubai made you think, all right, he's involved in this. But if he was, why would he risk everything and show up to Imola this weekend? There are still a lot of unanswered questions, but this is going to be very interesting to see unfold. We've had a lot of controversy in this sport, but this story could be up there at the top. All right, enough of Alpine. Let's go to the actual race this weekend. We've got a new name this year, the AWS Made in Italy Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. A historic track for the sport, not the most exciting track for today's version of Formula One, though. This could be the last race we see here for a while, with their contract expiring this year. European races are going to get cut from the calendar to make room for all of the new tracks that have been added. Stefano Domenicali has said it's tough to imagine Italy having two races moving forward. And let's be real, they're not getting rid of Monza. There are others that are getting taken off the calendar or sent to a rotating schedule, like Spa, for instance, that I really don't agree with and think should absolutely, without a doubt, be permanent fixtures. This one makes sense to get rid of. It's really tough to pass here, and we rarely see a lot of overtakes, and that'll probably continue this weekend. There's really only one spot, and that's going down the front straight into turn one, but other than that, it can turn into a procession. It also looks like we'll have a completely dry weekend, so I'd expect the standard one-stop race with most drivers starting on the medium tires and switching onto the hards, which of course cuts down on any potential for excitement. We need exciting races, though. The blame probably falls on the current generation of Formula One cars, so hopefully next year with the new regulations, that's something that changes. But we need tracks where cars can pass each other, and this track just doesn't do it. Going to the race, though, we should see more of the same from McLaren. I'm filming this on Friday night. We've already seen the first two practice sessions. And you never really know with the first two practice sessions because teams don't turn their engines all the way up until FP3 or sometimes even qualifying. But the McLarens have been dominant so far. And I'd expect that to continue through the weekend. It won't be as hot as it was in Miami, but the weather's warming up. And that's good news for McLaren with how things currently stand. Their advantage with their brake cooling and tire management is too great to overcome right now. And that should lead to another win on Sunday. But will this be a weekend where Oscar Piastri extends his championship lead, or one where Lando Norris starts to close the gap a little bit? I think the odds favor Lando this weekend. Last year, Oscar did qualify ahead of Lando, but was then given a 3-place penalty for impeding during qualifying. But in the race, Lando ended up finishing 14 seconds ahead of Oscar, and that was Oscar's only race at this track in his career. Remember, we had the 2023 race canceled because of flooding. Oscar was a reserve driver in 2022, and he never raced here in the lower series. Now, not that this is a very tricky track, but I think Lando's experience will push him over the edge of this weekend. I want to see these two drivers on the front row to start the race, though. As great as they've been, we just haven't seen any lap 1 battles or any on-track battles between the two drivers. Qualifying in lap 1, like it usually is, will be huge for them. It's hard to pass around here. But with these two drivers so close in their abilities and being in the same machinery, it's going to be hard for that second driver to get past the other one once the race settles down. And then you add in being in the dirty air and that slowing down and burning up your tires. You add in the pit strategy factor and the time the second driver will lose coming into the pits a lap later. Look, we never know what we'll get on Sunday, but there's a good chance the winner of this race is decided on Saturday. A big weekend for Red Bull and their trajectory for the season. We've been hearing for months that they are going to bring major upgrades to this race that they believe will put them back at the top with McLaren. The heart of the new upgrade centers around a new floor. Red Bull gave us a little bit of a tease with this with a new floor in Miami, but the majority of the new floor upgrades come this weekend. All of these upgrades are about increasing airflow around the side pods and through the Venturi channels underneath the car, and the hope is that it'll solve the tire management problems that Red Bull struggled with so much this season. I have my doubts. Granted, we only saw partial upgrades in Miami, but that new floor they brought really didn't do much to help with their tire management. And since Adrian Newey's departure, most of the Red Bull upgrades haven't really worked as expected. There were also some rumors that Red Bull's upgrades could also include a rear brake tire cooling solution similar to McLaren's, but I haven't really seen anything confirming that. But I think that's where McLaren really has the advantage. Not with the floor, but with the brakes. So until Red Bull can replicate that, I just can't see them actually catching up to McLaren outside of qualifying. Now, there have also been a lot of rumors floating around that Red Bull could get rid of Christian Horner if these upgrades don't work. I don't buy it. Max Verstappen came out, said it's a bunch of nonsense. Helmut Marko quickly shot it down and said the stories are also nonsense, and I think that says something. Helmut is not afraid to speak his mind to the media and put people who he disagrees with on the hot seat. So for him to come out and say it's nonsense tells me it's nonsense. Red Bull's not the only team bringing upgrades this weekend, though. Mercedes is bringing a new floor, new diffuser, and new rear air intakes, all with the hope of solving their overheating issues. It should be a step in the right direction for them, but like Red Bull, I don't think they close that gap to McLaren until they replicate McLaren's brake duct design. We should still see Mercedes towards the top of the order this weekend, just not at the very top. But I'm expecting them to come out of the weekend as the second best team. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if George ends up back on the podium yet again. An exciting weekend for his teammate, though, racing in Italy, his home race for the first time as a Formula One driver. And a true home race for Kimi Antonelli, growing up only 30 minutes from the track. A really cool moment for him on Thursday, bringing all of his classmates into the paddock. It's just wild that we have a Formula One driver who's still in school and still has a bunch of classmates as friends, but man, I just love this guy. He's so young and talented, but he's so happy and eager, and it's really exciting to have him in the sport. Look, there is nothing I'd like more to see Kimi get onto the podium at this race. I think he'll have to wait a little bit longer, though. I think George will continue to have the edge over him, at least for this weekend. Kimi doesn't have the only first for Italian fans this weekend. Lewis Hamilton's racing in Ferrari red for the first time on Italian soil. Unfortunately, it looks like it could be a tough Italian debut for Lewis in the Tifosi. Ferrari is just falling behind. McLaren is clearly a step ahead. Mercedes is bringing upgrades and they're improving. Red Bull is bringing upgrades and not improving as much as they like to, but still improving. Ferrari brought some upgrades the last few races, but they don't look like they're working. And outside of the development issues, this car seems like it has such a small operating window. There's no consistency, and the smallest setup changes throw everything off. Specific to this weekend, though, Ferrari has a brake issue that they need to figure out. Both drivers went off track in the Friday practice sessions, and both complained about the brakes not working. They still have time to straighten this out before qualifying, but it doesn't look promising. And it looks like if they do fix the brake issue, it's probably going to lead to a number of other issues with the car. I think Ferrari will still finish in the points on Sunday, but it probably won't be pretty, and it probably won't be a result the team will be happy with. Can we get a surprise result from Alpine? They brought a new front wing and engine cover to the race weekend, and it looks like it might be working so far. Pierre Gasly had a very unexpected P3 result in FP2. His teammate Franco Colapinto, he's not doing terrible, but he's clearly getting his feet back under him, so I'm not expecting a whole lot from him this weekend. With Gasly, though, it is important to note that his FP2 result was based off the soft tire runs, which very likely won't be used in the race, so it could mean good news for Alpine on Saturday, but maybe not on Sunday when race pace comes into play. But on the bright side, if they do qualify high, and if they do have those race pace issues, they might have enough to keep cars behind them with how hard it is to pass around here. My podium predictions for Sunday, though. P3, I have George Russell, yet again. P2, Oscar Piastri, and P1, Lando Norris. Maybe it changes in Spain with the new directives on wing flexibility, but until then, it should be Papaya on top. I'm not expecting the most exciting race, but I do have high hopes that we'll finally see some action between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. I don't think the gap will be as big as we saw in Miami, but I think there will be a notable gap between the McLarens in third place, and I like George to take home that P3 over Max. The Mercedes has just been stronger overall, and as great as Max is, I see him falling behind George at some point, whether it be in qualifying or whether it be during the race. I like Kimi's chances to beat out the Ferraris, but those three will be close and should take the P5 through P7 slots. But you never know. Maybe we get an Alpine. Maybe we get a Williams in there, mixing things up a little bit. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode previewing the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. I'm a little worried. I don't really expect the most exciting one, but maybe I'm wrong. I do think, though, we will get some excitement from the two McLaren drivers. Maybe it's in qualifying, maybe it's in the race. Hopefully it's in the race. Hey, maybe we get a surprise Max Verstappen spectacular pole lap yet again. Maybe we get some sassy radio messages from Ferrari. We'll see. But I will be back with another episode on Sunday, recapping everything we saw in the Grand Prix. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening. Till next time.